Hello and welcome to the It's Not About Fucking Food podcast. And my name is Chloe and I'm very, very excited to be back. And today I'm going to be talking about what we do when we're not hungry. Do I need to eat breakfast if I'm not hungry in the mornings? Do I need to eat even if I'm not hungry? And this is a really big thing, especially when we're in recovery from disordered eating and eating disorders. There are a lot of reasons why we might have stories about our hunger, why we might be disconnected to our hunger. And I'm going to go through some of those. Whether you experience this in the morning or other times of day, I'm going to be explaining the science behind this as well as what we can do to support you and what's best for your recovery. Some of the reasons we aren't hungry, especially in the morning, is because we have grown up with this habit conditioning that the kind of less is best mentality when it comes to food. We get used to saving calories for later, thinking, this is very scarcity mindset orientated, which is a very common sign of mental hunger, a sign that we're underfueled. When we start to save calories for later, we start to think, I'm not going to eat this now, I'm going to save it for later, I'm going to really enjoy X, Y, and Z this evening. So what we see quite often, and what I see with my clients, is quite often their calories or their food intake is very much skewed towards the end of the day. They eat very little in the morning, eat probably less at lunch, and then they really eat the majority of their calories in the evening. And really what we're looking at, and what I like to see for clients, is that about halfway through their intake, if they're counting, if they're not counting, like halfway through their intake, just after lunch really, because we want to fuel for the day we've had. But as I said, there's lots of reasons why physiologically and mentally we might have conditioned ourselves into not eating breakfast because we're saving those calories for later, and that then becomes a habit. We don't eat breakfast. I just don't like breakfast. It's something I quite often hear, and actually it's not the case when you start to unpick it. It's sort of tangled in that person's relationship with food. Other reasons, we know that when people struggle with eating disorders, disordered eating, there's a high level of anxiety that quite often coexists with that. Anxiety is a product of having those high cortisol, high adrenaline levels, and that can really impact the amount of hunger we experience, especially in the morning. Then because we're hungry, we're more in that cortisol adrenaline pathway because our body sees it as a sign of threat, so it creates more of those stress hormones. In response, we therefore see less hunger, and then we might feel really, really hungry, maybe to the point we feel a little bit dizzy, we feel like we can't concentrate. Those are all signs of hunger when we've got over hungry. So that might be something you experience. And the other reason is disconnection. As I said, we're so often not used to, we're sort of told that hunger is a bad thing, something we should ignore, something that we shouldn't give into. If we're not hungry, then have a drink. It blows my mind every time I think about it. It's like somebody saying, they've hurt their knee. Oh, go and have a wee. It doesn't really work like that. Our body's very good at giving us the symptoms, the signals that we need. That's, the sensations we experience are signals that our body is asking us for something different. So that disconnection that we have, where we don't trust our hunger, where we don't trust our bodies, is then going to lead us more with that mental hunger. So we might think, oh, I'm not hungry in the morning, but actually we're experiencing lots of mental hunger, maybe not that physical sensation because we're sort of cut off from the neck down, as I explain it quite often. So mental hunger, you might experience things like anxiety, lack of sleep, fantasizing about food, counting down until dinner time. That sort of save for later mentality is all examples of mental hunger. I'm pretty sure I've done an episode in season 1 about it, so I won't go too much into it. But if that's the case for you, then you might be noticing actually those are real symptoms actually that you need to be having breakfast in the morning. If you're struggling with those signs of mental hunger, if you're struggling with binge eating, again, a really big trigger, that you need to be having breakfast in the morning to make sure that you don't kick further into that cortisol adrenaline because your body is feeling like it's under threat because it's not receiving the energy that it needs ultimately to thrive. So what I recommend for clients is they eat really within an hour of waking up. Is a very normal breakfast time that's really good at managing those cortisol and adrenaline levels as well. And then eating every 2 to 3 hours throughout the day. This quite often looks like 3 meals, maybe 2 to 3 snacks, depending on what we're trying to achieve. And even if you're not hungry, it's really, really important that you eat, especially during eating disorder recovery. And if you're in recovery from binge eating again as well, every 2 to 3 hours is really important. It tells the body there's enough food coming in, that it's safe. And that's ultimately going to mean that you get to recover physically and psychologically faster than you will if you really eke out that process. And when we're not really feeling hungry, but we know that we need to eat, that's something we call mechanical eating. That's where we're sort of eating because we know we have to, and that's something we get to do in recovery. It doesn't mean that you're greedy, it doesn't mean that you're overeating, it doesn't mean any of those things that our eating disorders and disordered eating minds make it mean, right? It means we're looking after ourselves and looking after our bodies. Remembering that even if we haven't moved our bodies are busy every moment of every day. You know, they are doing so many things for us, and that takes energy. So you're always deserving of eating every 2 to 3 hours. Pack snacks in your bag, whatever you need to do to make that happen for you. And you might notice when you start to do this regularly, you start to notice actually you're getting more connected to those hunger signals, and that can feel a little bit overwhelming to start with, but that's a really, really good sign that your body's starting to trust you. It's relying less on those mental hunger signals and more on those physical hunger signals because it knows you're listening. And that is where we really start to see people making fantastic progress in their journey. I'll leave it there, just a short one for today. I look forward to speaking to you in the next episode.